Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. How about some Baktria versus Pontus matchup? Now this is a fun matchup. The two factions are actually somewhat similar in the way they play. They both have access to excellent horsemen and even mobile missile horsemen, which are quite good. Both have access to some decent skirmish options in terms of archers and cheap eastern slingers. And then both of them, though, where they kind of lack typically, though, is in the melee infantry department. Bactria's got these thorax swords, and on Pontus' side, I imagine we'll see some... oh, no, we're seeing pikemen. Interesting pick here, but normally you'd see something like this, the Pontic swords. Units that just can't stand toe-to-toe with most heavy infantry in Rome 2. It doesn't mean they're awful, it just means that they're not going to go out and win you a bunch of head-on fights with folks. So again, it makes these two factions curious, in my opinion. Let's take a look at the Bactrian army. It does have a Bactrian Royal Guard General, which is a fairly hard-hitting hoplite unit. And then we're going to have some horse skirmishers working the flanks. They are going to be up against some Scythian horse archers here that Pontus has brought. And more horse skirmishers for Bactria. I'm surprised that we did not see the bow horsemen for Bactria. I believe they have access to it. I could be wrong. Now, Bactrian Noble Horse is going to be another factor for the Bactrians, and it is a very tough heavy horse. 95 armor, it's got 42 defense, 42 attack, 29 damage, 15 bonus versus large. This is a pretty serious cavalry, and it hits hard because it's a heavy melee cav, and it comes in at a pretty solid price, if I remember right. I think it's in like the 800 range, which isn't bad. Now, let's take a look at the rest of the Bactrian. Oh, there is one horse archer for Bactria back here. Only 2 of the nobles, and then a line of 4 Persian light archers. Now, Persian light archers are pretty affordable. They do have the 150 range. They do the 35, like the standard 35 damage for archers. There's a couple of Thurio spears in the back for Bactria as well. Bactria is mostly a Greek faction, I would say, mixed with some Eastern elements. And they do have access, I believe, to cataphracts as well, which are not present at the moment. There's going to be the Scythian horse archers we mentioned for Pontus. Look at this, those horse skirmishers just really mixing it up out here. And they managed to get really close to the Scythian horse archers and let them have it. Javelins will do more damage more quickly than these archers. Look at this. Bactria's aggression is going to pay off here in terms of getting after those horse archers. Now they've got that Cappadocian cavalry following. Let's look up front for Pontus. They brought 3 Eastern slingers. This will be less damage output per minute, but more ammunition and a slight missile block chance as well, because that's just what slingers do. And they do more armor-piercing damage output. We've got Pontic swords up front. There's 3 of those. And then I see 3 units of pikes, unless one is hidden for some reason. And then there's 3 units of mercenary naked swords. So a very mixed infantry contingent. Then a Pontic Royal Cavalry. This is a very heavy shot cav. There is, it looks like, 4 Cappadocian cavalry in total, and Cappadocian cavalry are listed as a heavy melee cav here. They have slightly higher attack than the Bactrian Royals that we saw, but you'll notice they have lower defense and significantly lower armor. So the Bactrian noble cavalry is better pound for pound, but Cappadocians are certainly capable heavy melee cavalry. Already the slingers for Pontus are going to open fire on the infantry of Bactria, which is pushing forward. The hillmen are relatively vulnerable because their shields are nothing stellar, and it looks like that the two factions are looking to collide head-on here. I don't know if either player is going to sit back and try for a protracted skirmish. I see cavalry moving up to support infantry charges, but with pikes right behind here, the Bactrian player calls off that cavalry and basically just sends its hillmen in here as sacrificial pawns on the chessboard, and that is often the role of hillmen. Look at this, here comes the Bactrian fire into the Cappadocian cavalry. I would think that those pikemen would make pretty tempting targets as well. We will see what happens there, but those hillmen are going to pull back, but they can't, so they go ahead and just charge forward to try and bind up as many units as they can here. And now the Bactrian player is falling back a little, and I think attempting to do some missile damage. Some nice volleys here coming in from those Persian archers. These units are going to have to protect those archers, though, because now Pontus is pushing hard on aggression here. Here comes the Cappadocian cavalry. They take a face full of javelins right before that charge. They will get a little damage done, but I think that unit is going to mostly be neutralized because it's working kind of far ahead. But here comes the naked swords. They could get a lot of value here if they get a solid charge against that thorax sword, but it looks like they're going to be intercepted potentially by this Bactrian Noble Horse. And anyway, there's an engagement out here. The Bactrian Noble Horse picked off a Cappadocian cavalry, but it's supported by Pontic swords. Nice intercept by the Thurio spears, trying to save the charge on the Thorax swords, and then they'll turn the Thorax swords and go into the Pontic swords. Those naked swords will make quick work of the Thurio spears. These guys, despite being mostly naked, despite the moniker they receive, are going to do a ton of damage to spears in that fight. The archers are still kind of doing their work here. Let's see what happens as the battle continues to unfold. The Cappadocian cavalry is kind of getting its butt handed to it by the Noble Horse. And I'm not surprised. I mentioned earlier some of the stat differences. However, there is infantry support that could swing that one. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. The Thorax swords ended up in a better fight once they retreated and turned in. However, see over here the Bactrian Royal Guard, that heavy hoplite unit now moving into play. It should do well to hold back pretty much all of Pontus's infantry, and Pontus is piling, and look at this, they found a gap in the line and went straight through to the Persian light archers. There are some Thurio spears nearby as well as hillmen, but this is a pretty solid play here. That Cappadocian cavalry has the chance to kill a tremendous number of archers in this vicinity, and it did so before moving on out, so that's potentially a big win for Pontus. We'll see. Over here, that Bactrian Noble Horse did get overwhelmed by the infantry support of the Cappadocians, and now Pontus is kind of folding back in on this flank as their Royal Cavalry is doing some work. And now we have naked swords breaking loose from this fight and going to pressure the rear lines of Baktria. So a pretty tight fight right now in terms of the balance bar. I'm not really sure who I think is ahead. Look at this, the the Bactrian Noble Horse pushing on through, and here comes those horse skirmishers from earlier, all coming in to hit the Eastern Slingers. I think that's a pretty solid call. Those Eastern Slingers are a huge threat at the moment and need to be dealt with. The Horse Archers are used to charge into the Mercenary Naked Swords, and despite being a very light Horse Archer, actually, sorry, that's a medium unit, so actually they'll do okay on the charge versus those naked swords. They did. That medium weight being just enough to kind of help them out. Look at that Bactrian Royal Guard getting a lot of kills there. 115 in melee. It's a tough unit. It's got a lot of armor. It doesn't have the best hoplite spear, but it is a tough unit. Pontus is kind of losing some ground here, in my opinion, and it's because they're running short on cavalry, and then their slingers took a big hit. So did the Persian archers, but the archers are now firing again, whereas the slingers are still under pressure. And I don't know, though. There's a Scythian horse archer over here. It's going to depend on ammunition. There's a Bactrian horse archer to counter that. There are pikes left, but it's only one unit, and there's a lot of units left for Baktria. So I think Baktria has taken over the advantage here, and in no small part due to the hit on those slingers. I think that was a big deal. But the Bactrian infantry just managed to kind of hold strong there, and there's quite a bit of it left. So ended up being a good scenario. Those Pontic Royal Cavalry are under a lot of archer fire, just a tremendous amount there. So Pontus's forces being ground down and finished off, but it was a tough fight, and I think there were some good plays on both sides. I think we saw Pontus finding some early success against that Bactrian Noble Horse by using combined arms, and they had a pretty effective first charge. I think Baktria fell back, managed to keep themselves in the battle, and tried really hard to ensure that their infantry got the right charges in certain spots, and that ends up paying dividends. I'd say the other place that Baktria did very well, in my opinion, is with those skirmisher cavalry early, doing a ton of damage to those mercenary Scythian horse archers. I don't know what I was about to call them, but I think I was about to make up another unit name similar to the Mercantary Tarentine cavalry. In any case, that's going to be the end of Pontus. A nice fight for him. An interesting army here with a lot of combined arms, pikes, swords, Thurio spear, or I don't remember if they had Thurio spears, but the cavalry, the Cappadocians mixed with the slingers, the horse archers. Again, a very interesting combined arms strategy that we saw from Pontus. It did not work out in this particular case, but it was a fun idea. Look at these pikemen, though. They got a lot of kills in that one. It may have been from Hillman, I don't know. They did pick up a chevron, and they're working fairly close to a second one. So we'll take a look at all the stats and see how things stacked up here. But GG to both players. I'm going to end that replay. So that was Sol Invictus, Sol Invictus, and a Rash. Appreciate Sol sending this one. As you saw recently, I played in some battles that, of course, were over on his Discord. I try and keep that linked, though someone told me that the link in the description may be wrong. I'll try and look at correcting that. see if I can get it right. But nice job to Sol and Arash. A good battle, and I think well fought on both sides. Obviously, there has to be a winner, and in this case, that was Sol. And if we take a look at where some of his units did well, his Persian Light Archers, I feel like, did score nicely there. This Bactrian Horse Archer got a tremendous number of kills, and really well done there. The Royal Guard also performed well, as did some of these Bactrian Noble Horse. Bactrian Nobles are just a solid cavalry unit, there is no doubt about it. Really a good one. And then when we take a look at Pontus here, as far as some of their more effective units, they had some Cappadocian cavalry pick up some chevrons. One of their horse archers picked one up, and then look at the kills here, 160 on one of the mercenary naked swords. So well done there, and then this pike unit also picking up quite a few. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed it. HeirofCarthage signing out for now. I'll see you soon with some more action in Total War Rome 2.